We are at Crater Lake, Oregon. It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my life. A place like this always reminds me why I live in Southern Oregon, why I've chosen to for the last 19 years of my life. Great place to raise a family and great place to play guitar. I've always really been moved by music, even as a little kid. The blade of the reaper suspending the eye. I remember like the first song I really liked was probably hearing some Deep Purple or something on the radio and really identifying with the heaviness of it. I remember having this thought in my head that I really liked what I was listening to, but I wish that it was just more dense. In 1980 or beginning of 1981, in junior high, a friend of mine turned me on to punk rock and hardcore and stuff, and that was immediately like, wow, this is what I was thinking about all along. Immediately, I was obsessed with it. Sex Pistols, Ramones, Germs, Black Flag, Fear. Not too long after that, like Bad Brains and Minor Threat, TSOL. Battalion of Saints was our local band in San Diego. You know, they were really incredible. A really pronounced Metallica influence, and that was where I got, like, they were kind of like my portal to Motorhead, because they were actually playing Motorhead songs live. And then through that and tape trading, I got exposed to like Sabbath, AC/DC, other hard rock and metal stuff that I totally identified with too, and kind of was rethinking my whole position on where I was initially with what I liked in music. There was a guitar in my house. My dad had a guitar, but he didn't play it. So to kind of piss him off, I thought I should learn how to play guitar. And there was always a lot of people around to jam with. The icing on the cake was that the guitar class at the high school, everybody knew it was the class that all you had to do was show up for roll call, and you could just walk out the back door and nobody would know. So you could just ditch for an hour and a half or something. But it turned out that I didn't really do that. I did it a few times, but one of the older punks in the school was in that class, and he started showing me stuff like Ventures songs and Black Flag songs and Dick Dale note runs and stuff like that. And that was kind of how I started, you know, moving my fingers on the guitar and just, you know, kind of figuring it out. I was in a band before I could even play, really, you know, I mean, and that was completely fine, because it wasn't about how great you could play or how many notes you could play or, you know, what guitar you had or what amp you had or any of that shit. It was just about, can you pour your emotions into this thing? You know, that's what punk rock and hardcore was to me. It was just a pure emotional release. All those things combined were kind of what brought me to guitar. Although originally, up until Violent Coercion, I was playing bass in the first bands I was in. And it's kind of what I play now. I mean, it's a guitar, but I play it like a bass.
If you open yourself up to it as a musician, you're influenced by any sound that's made in the world at any time. Which isn't to discount Einstreisen and Neubauten, but just to say that those guys made a lot of noise, and they came out and they kind of deconstructed and reconstructed music within their own realm, and they weren't concerned about what other people were expecting them to do or what other people wanted, you know, and that's totally what we're doing, you know. We're not concerned about whether people are into what we're doing or not. We're doing it because we feel that it's like something that we have to do.
I met Noah first. He ended up joining the band last. I'd met his sister in San Diego, and then when I moved up to the Bay Area, we immediately clicked. Jason, we were living in this hotel, and we came home to the hotel one day, and Jason was actually super battered and bloodied and laying in front of the front door of the hotel. He had just got the shit kicked out of him, and we took him in for the night, gave him a place to stay. I met Dave just on the street. We were living in our car at the time. But it wasn't too long after that, maybe 2-3 months, that Dave came up to me and they had this band Violent Coercion. They had been together previously for about 1.5 years, I think, and he asked me if I wanted to come try out for their band. And we ended up recording a demo. And then we just split up because like me and Dave and Jason just weren't into the direction of the band at all. And we were really wanting to do something different. After Violent Coercion broke up, we spent a few months just basically talking about it. Before we even really started playing, we were kind of visualizing it and where we wanted to take it. Keeping in mind that at that time, like I was 18, Jason was 15, Dave was 16. And we started out just the three of us. Dave and Jason were both really, really exceptional at a young age. I was definitely playing catch up. I was always pretty good at writing riffs and putting songs together, but as far as actually playing, it was always a problem. It took me about 10 years to get to the point where I could actually kind of play what I was thinking. I saw this movie, this movie, I think it was called Elvis. It was about Elvis. It starred Kurt Russell. I was really, moved by it. I've always been a fan of Elvis and of early rock and roll in general, but just the energy of it, the simplicity of it. And then there's a couple times in there when he's got an acoustic guitar and he's playing these songs, and that was really inspiring to me as well. Right after my oldest child, my son Damon, was born, we were playing this show at the Gilman Street Project in Berkeley. Damon's mom, something had happened. I don't know if somebody broke into our car or what it was, but she had come into the club with Damon and she was trying to get my attention. This guy just jumped up on stage and ran over and stage dived right onto my kid when he was 11 months old. But I remember looking down in the audience and just seeing this guy grab the guy around the throat and just start fucking strangling him, Flash forward 6 months or a year later when we're looking for a second guitarist, and Dave's like, I know this guy Steve. And we went down to Steve's house to see what he was all about, and we walked in and there's this guy. The guy who had strangled the guy who had accidentally jumped on my kid. So, it was kind of like one of those moments where you're like, yeah, this is our guy. Bringing Steve in just kind of solidified the whole thing, elevated it, and enabled us to really push forward and get The Word is Law written, which was our second album. By the time we got to the end of Word is Law and all the songs we'd written there, we were very much ready to add either a third guitar or keyboards, and we basically thought that keyboards was what we wanted to do because the way that we had it in our heads, we wanted something that would be limitless.
Each man has his breaking point, you know, and you are no exception.
From the beginning of the band, we had always wanted to do like a live film and slide collage behind us, but we had no idea how to do it, didn't know anybody who did it, and so we decided we were going to find two people and bring them in right at that point. And so we found this guy Simon and Adam, and they happened to be great friends. They joined, and we did Souls at Zero, and that was a huge step. The vision was starting to come together at that point. We were on the road a lot in the 90s, and Simon and Adam didn't really like being on the road as much as we were at the time, and so they eventually stepped away, and we got our roadie Pete to take over the visuals, and then we went and convinced Noah, even though he was a guitar player and a recording engineer, to join Neurosis as a keyboardist, because Noah was a guy who had been there the whole time. And so when that happened, that was like, circle complete. And from that moment on was when we really started to, we were really able to dig deep at that point.
The idea of trying to go places where you're not comfortable and become comfortable in them is what's kind of led us to this point,
I think that Neurosis has a pretty antisocial vibe in a lot of ways. I mean, it's always been a super selfish expression. Like when we added keyboards, people took that as a pretty antisocial statement. We had a lot of people turn their backs on us when we did that without even listening to it. But it was, I remember thinking like, hey, we're doing the right thing because this is exactly what we want, is to get rid of anybody who's not going to be along for the ride. It was a real fucking battle to write those songs. And then once we had written them and recorded them, then we went out and toured them for like 2 years and did them every night. And that was pretty damaging as well, because there's just a lot of energy in those songs that's just not the type of thing you want to reinforce into your body and mind every night. Every one of those songs, I would associate actual physical, spiritual, and mental pain with performing to this day. There was an enormous amount of shit going on in our world at that time. There was a lot of loss, a lot of grief, a lot of addiction. Things were just not good. And, at the same time, it's like these songs were coming through, and we could feel the weight of the songs and the words and everything about it, it was hard to get through that portal for sure. And I know that it's, a lot of people hold that record up above all of our others, and I understand why. There's a feeling in that record that goes beyond anything else that we did before or since. There's this wind there that I always associate with Oakland that used to kind of freak me out. It wasn't like a big wind or anything. It was just this fucking breeze kind of thing that would happen. It was intense. You definitely had to be, paying attention to what you were doing all the time. It was definitely a place where, you know, you could get hurt or you could hurt yourself, which I definitely did. The Bay Area is just so, always has been like just plagued with drugs, and I think that, you know, for a kid like me that was coming in out of the suburbs and then going into the city, you know, it took some getting used to, and you know, you look for things to kind of steel you up and give you, you know, a little bit of courage to be able to walk around and live your life, and I found myself just, you know, going really hard into hard drugs, and addiction got a hold of me really strong when I was there a few times. Then I hurt myself, you know, pretty bad with that. It definitely brought a lot of strife into my home life. It brought a lot of strife into the band. At a certain point, they sat me down and were like, "Look, dude, this is gonna fucking end because something really bad is about to come your way. So one way or another, you're just doing shit that's not working." I feel pretty lucky, honestly. Just being able to be here is, considering some of the stupid decisions that I made back in those days, you know. Just kind of pure luck, really, you know. Neurosis is one of those things that it's like, for people that connect with it and they find it, it becomes a pretty significant thing to them. We haven't suffered more than anybody else out there in the world, you know. But for some reason, it's, you know, the kind of the reoccurring theme of our art and what we do. It's like the kind of the unspoken commonality between us and people that really get something out of listening to us for the most part. And that's a, you know, pretty profound feeling of loss and understanding that group of emotions and what that does to you and what that does to the people around you. Life can be a real motherfucker, and you know, if you reach a point where you can't see straight anymore and you can't figure shit out, you know, just don't be too proud to seek help, you know. I do. If you're in a lot of pain, and I mean mentally, spiritually, there's nothing to be ashamed of than that, you know. You know, it's something that we as a group really understand on a deep level, and I think that, you know, that's the kind of shit that's really the hardest to work through in so many ways in your life. takes its toll on you to kind of open up the way that we do when we perform. I think, you know, it can make for some pretty intense emotional times. The connection is always really fresh with us. We rarely go a day without communicating as a group about something. We've never really questioned the path that we're on. It's always been a family. I think that's where a lot of the strength comes from. You know, I think your adopted family is kind of it's like the people that you choose to be with, you know, it's a significant bond. Very significant bond. And it's really carried us through a lot of shit, I think. Because there was definitely plenty of reasons to stop at various times. You know, we've had all sorts of things thrown in our way that would give one or all of us the reason to just say, fuck this. But we never did, you know, we just kept going and fought through it all.